I don't think the companies are going to drive this choice. So I think the employees are. And I like working here at my company, but I really prefer to work from home than work in a corporate, like kind of traditional brick and mortar office setting.
John, thank you for coming and joining me today. I really appreciate it. How are you doing?
Fantastic. Thank you, Gustavo. And how are you, bud?
Good, good. John, I want to make sure that I pronounce your last name correctly. How do you pronounce it?
It's Bernatovicz. Although at every holiday, whenever my family gets together, we all go around the table to see how we pronounce it, and it comes out in 4 or 5 different variations. So I'm sure you can appreciate that.
And there's variations?
Yeah, Bernatovicz, Bernatovicz, just where things are enunciated and more pronunciations are put in certain sections. The end of it is certainly negotiable, I guess.
Well, with my accent, there's probably going to be another variation of it.
So. Fantastic. Yeah, bring it on.
Well, listen, John is the owner, is the founder of Willory, an HR and payroll consulting firm. Tell us a little bit about Willory. When did you start it, and what do you guys do?
Yeah, so I founded the firm in 2010, and we are a staffing and consulting firm that solely focuses in HR and payroll. We do 3 distinct things and have just innovated a new product. So the first thing is search. So we provide direct hire search services for clients that are looking for anywhere from a CHRO, director of payroll, down to we've placed interns in HR for clients. And then our staff augmentation business provides a wide variety of resources to clients when they need help in their HR and payroll department, specifically around HR generalist, HR manager, CHRO, as well as payroll processing, payroll manager, compensation benefits, HRIS, really if they need contract resources, temp resources, or fractional if they're long-term. And then our consulting practice focuses in on HCM consulting. So we do optimization and implementations of systems that are specific to HR tech, as well as help clients do vendor selections. And then we provide HR consulting and payroll consulting. So those are around compliance and regulatory insurances, as well as making sure that the clients are using best practices and have their processes down pat and best practice. So, and then we wrapped all that around with a new product called How's My HR, to where we can do a digital online HR assessment of an entire HR and payroll department. It's 175 questions. It's 12 functional areas, and we'll give you this 25 plus page report in less than 45 minutes in your survey to be able to give you specific items you need from a compliance perspective, best practices, et cetera. So it's been a pretty unique innovation for our firm.
So how long did you start the company? You're based out of Columbus, is that correct?
Actually, no, I live in Bath. We expanded down into Columbus at the beginning of 2019. So I'm an Akron guy, and I founded the firm back in 2010. The story for that is I used to work for ADP, so large HR technology outsourcing company. And then I got into the search business. And then when my daughter was born, our second child, I worked from home for a bit and realized how much I enjoyed doing that. At the same time, was able to be pretty productive. And then about 6 months later or so, I left the firm I was with and founded Willory to be a 100% virtual workforce. So my entire staff works remotely, other than other than consultants or resources that go to clients, although most recently that has been limited to basically none. So we've been set up virtually and doing remote work since 2010.
Yeah, I'll give a plug to your company because I actually met John because we ended up hiring a temporary employee, Ron, who works in our HR department. He does a great job. And, sometimes with staff agencies, it's kind of like a hit or miss when you have these temporary workers. But let me tell you, Ron has been a stellar addition to the team, great energy. So I appreciate that you guys put us in touch with him.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the plug. Yeah, it's good stuff.
So interestingly enough, you started your firm as a remote type of firm. And here we are in 2020, companies scrambling around how to figure out the remote work. Tell us a little bit of what was your thinking about starting your company as a remote work.
Yeah, sure. First and foremost, it was selfish. So I wanted the best of both worlds. So when my daughter was born, I had 2 kids at the time, and my wife and I had decided that I would focus on my business and some of the things that I was doing, and then she would mostly stay at home. She did some adjunct professor work, but her primary responsibility was taking care of the kids, and then I focused my time in our work and providing for our family financially. So I did that, and while we had my son, and then my daughter came, and I was like, hey, wait a second, I'm missing out on a lot of stuff when I go back to work. And so can I find a way to do this remote work thing? And I had done it previously at my prior job at ADP and had some success with it, but I realized, selfishly for me, I wanted that work-life harmony. That's not balance anymore, because it's never equal as far as work and life. So there's harmony there. You have to ebb and flow. And so I decided that it was a unique opportunity to create a business, a virtual business. And what ended up happening was I hired 2 really great people that were right out of college, Bob Haas and Jamie Myers. And they set the foundation for me to be able to build a culture that is focused in on family first, our ability then to do high quality, high service work for our clients, and then have a unique culture, a place that people like to go to work at. So I have this famous line from a Bare Naked Ladies song called "Absence makes the heart grow fungus, not fonder." And it's kind of funny that, in my opinion, our team is more closely knit because we really cherish the times when we're together, as opposed to being with each other in the traditional sense every single day in a brick and mortar office.
Got it. You're not taking for granted the times that you are together, where if you're together all the time, you kind of give it, it's a given that you're going to see each other. Yeah, good to know. So here you are, clearly your firm has been ready, but tell me a little bit of what you found in this process, either from clients or just people in general reaching out to you. What has been what you're hearing about this transition to remote work?
I think first and foremost, it was the abruptness, the fact that we were so quickly required to do it. So many companies were, without being properly prepared. And I think the preparedness is in 2 specific areas. One is around the people that you have. We've been fortunate to hire people over the last 10 years, Gustavo, that they wanted to work remotely. We screened them through our process to make sure that they had an appropriate setup at home, that they were disciplined enough to get to work, do the things they need to do without significant amounts of supervision. Now we have checks and balances and controls and accountability in place for them, so we know when they're working and what they're specifically working on. So we don't really miss a lot, or as a matter of fact, I think we're more productive than most companies. Yeah. So I think the people, so you didn't have a chance to really vet people out to say, can you do this? We were all kind of forced to jump into it without a whole lot of planning from a resourcing perspective. And then secondarily, the biggest change for me was that the fact that now people are doing this with a whole bunch of other things going on in their home. Obviously, maybe a spouse has been put back to work at home to work remotely. Maybe you might have children or grandchildren that you're taking care of that have to do their schoolwork online. And so now you're distracted completely by the fact that you have other responsibilities, and you're supposed to do your job and adjust to being at home. And maybe your Wi-Fi is crashing, or your company didn't have the right technology in place to amplify some of your VoIP systems or getting access to your core technology. So to me, those 2 things, of the people that you had, and then the what I'll just call the overwhelming responsibility that people had at home, on top of the fact that we're all gravely concerned about coronavirus and what it can mean for those that we love and care for, and being careful in that regard. So those 2 things, I think, were specifically disruptive in a way that, I think people have settled from what I've seen somewhat, but there's still a lot of gaps out there. And I'm not sure that in this environment that we're able to fix all those, because we didn't do a ton of planning for it well in advance.
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to a colleague that about this remote work scenario, and she was sharing with me I don't know if it was a contact that she had or someone that she heard, but a company that was going through an analysis, I think of about 2 years of ultimately leading to remote work. And they were investing time, money, effort in really analyzing what would be the impact, how do they need to set it up, and coronavirus hits, and they have no choice but to start it. And you know, I think that that's probably reflective of many companies out there, that you don't have time to think. You just have to do it. There's no opportunity to say, well, should we do this? No, you have no other choice. So it's an interesting situation to be in, because now you're doing it. And now the issue is, where does it stick? Which companies decide, you know what, this works for us, we'll continue it. Have you heard anything related to that debate?
Yeah, there's a lot of data out there. I just saw something Josh Bersin put out that said 49% of CFOs are going to look at their long-term leases, their infrastructure that they put in place, because they've seen, you know, what people are telling me statistically is that people that are working from home are working more. They have less of a commute time, less lunch, less distractions. I think the data is saying about 2.5 hours a day of increased work. Now, are we getting 2.5 hours of additional productivity? I'm not necessarily sure, because people are adjusting to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard, okay, so we're going to look at this long term. Right now, we think we're getting people are being as productive, but it's taking them more time to do their job. But I think that, to me, I don't think the companies are going to drive this choice, Gustavo. I think the employees are. Once they get back to work, and maybe they continue to, I know some companies are doing like soft openings, 25% capacity, 50% capacity. I really feel like once people go back to work, it's going to be a different, you're going to think differently. People are going to be wearing masks. It's going to be a different work setting. And once they do that, they're going to realize that, hey, wait a second, I like working here at my company, but I really prefer to work from home. And I believe there'll be enough chatter and, you know, the drive from the employee population that will be like people that work at my firm, that if you asked all of them, they say they'd prefer to work from home than work in a corporate, like kind of traditional brick and mortar office setting. So I think the employees will drive it, frankly.
You know, I debate in my head as I consider the environment, particularly now with the economy, how much leverage employees will actually have. Because if you think prior to coronavirus, low unemployment, high demand for all kinds of skill set, having a hard time attracting and retaining talent because they're jumping either because they get more money somewhere else or better benefits or better work environment. And here's now a situation where the supply of talent has increased because of the layoffs. Here you're thinking that employees are going to drive that, but can they? Now that there's so much supply out there, you may have employers that say, nope, because I can pick this one that wants to work in the office. I don't have to pick you anymore. What's your thought on that front?
Yeah, so for me, at the end of the day, our number one customer is our employee. They're the ones delivering the service to our clients. They're the ones that are representing our firm. And if there's a consistent murmur or there's momentum from that employee population consistently, even if, so number one, you have a core group of employees that are still at your company, right, that are working remotely and then are coming back to work. And then you're going to attract people into your company and have a probably higher degree of resources available to you than you've had in the past pre-corona. But I think all those people are going to realize, not all of them, a larger majority is going to realize that I prefer to work from home. And so in that communication, they're going to seek out employers that provide that flexibility. And the ones that don't, I believe, will have a less likely, a less larger pool of potential candidates because they don't offer that flexibility. This is the way we're going to do it, take it or leave it, kind of, my way or the highway, even though they are at an advantage from a kind of buyer, kind of employer to employee candidate perspective. I just don't think long term that's going to work, in my opinion. And I've lived it for 10 plus years. And I've talked to countless people. And as a matter of fact, I had a long discussion with a lifelong friend of mine who always struggled to understand why I did what I did and how I did it, because he just thought you got to be in the office and see people doing it. And their business was forced to switch to remote. And he was like, not as bad as I thought it was. I actually kind of like it. And we're getting as much done, if not maybe a little bit more.
Yep.
So now that they've been forced to try it out, and my guess is some of the executives feel the same way, right? They're living this kind of work-life harmony. Now, I would say the thing that will change, Gustavo, once the kids go back to school, is that work from home will be a little bit easier for, let's just say the mom and the dad, or the main caregivers for children, because they won't have that major distraction of kids being there and having responsibility with school. And so I think once that softens a bit and some of the schooling stuff softens, I think some of the stress that's happened with the remote workforce, taking care of those things, will diminish.
Yeah, I cannot imagine how difficult it would be. I have two kids. One is 14, the other one is 17. And I've been splitting time between going to the office and working from home. And I have to admit that I have not felt disruption in that front, simply because they're older, they're self-sufficient. If anything, we've actually found more opportunities to interact when I've been working from home. I cannot imagine what it is to have younger kids and how disruptive that is, simply because you have to take care of them. It's not like I can tell my son, listen, just go and play video games, all right? I need the next 2 hours on my own, and he'll happily oblige and do it. My daughter is painting, but younger kids, that's a variable that I've heard it. Certainly, my sister-in-law is in that boat, but I have not lived that directly, because luckily I have older kids. My wife is working from home too. So for us, it's been a smooth transition. But, as the head of HR, and just anecdotally, I do hear of those circumstances, and it's just not easy. But certainly, as that variable moves away as being a major concern, then I think the whole idea of working remotely will kind of settle in. However, the challenge will be convincing, right, the executives, the department heads, the leaders of companies that, still have some hesitation, have reserves around productivity. Are they really working? Can we really coexist with, through Microsoft Teams or Skype or Zoom? What's your take on all of that front? And I certainly know you're biased because you've been practicing it for the last 10 years, but what would be some of the recommendations or arguments that you would make?
Yeah, and I'll go back to your one point about the stressors. It's interesting. One of my dear friends, a professional coach to me, and she's actually one of the speakers for Disrupt HR down in Columbus, our initial cast, Dr. Melissa Briggs Phillips. In a conversation I had with her recently, Gustavo, she ordered the stress levels 1, 2, and 3 for this type of people in coronavirus. The people that have it or have loved ones that were impacted by COVID. So that's the top stress. You've got the disease. You've seen this happening. It's real. The second are the frontline healthcare workers that are risking their lives to save many others and putting themselves in harm's way. And then the third stressor, she said, were single or both working from home parents that have young children that are in school, because they have all that responsibility. And every moment that you're up, you're on to something, right? So it is terribly stressful. I've seen it in my company, a wide range of team members that maybe don't have kids or they're more mature, or down to ones that have kids that they need responsibility. And we try to make as many accommodations and support to them as we can. As it relates to the convincing of the executives, to your question, Gustavo, here's the deal. Like, again, I'll go back to my number one customer is my employee, and my employee, I want them to be satisfied. I want them to be skilled at what we do. I want them to be knowledgeable to our clients and an expert in the services that we provide. But their happiness and the way by which they do things is terribly important to me. And in addition to that, I think the culture that the culture that these executives are responsible for sometimes are set by policies and procedures and mission and vision and core values. But more times than not, in my opinion, they're driven by the people that you hire that work there. They're either happy working or they're not happy or something in between. And again, as you said, I am biased, but this is what I believe. I think it's best for employers to provide the alternative to people that would make their work-life harmony more whatever word you want to use, right? To be able to do their work productively. Now the trick of this, in my opinion as well, is that this is an unfair sample size for us to be able to be checking productivity, because many companies, their business is down or we're then in this incredibly disruptive state. And then people are also having those other responsibilities, like we said, as far as taking care of kids or homeschooling or having a spouse that's also working in their office with them. So it's not necessarily fair. So I think it'll be really unique for employers to give, let's do a Friday every day, every week off. Everybody works from home on Fridays. Let's just see how this goes. So when they come back, they can try it out when the economy and we don't have the gray cloud of all that has been in the last few weeks and months of Corona over their heads. So really, to me, it's about letting the people that work for you drive that, maintaining a world-class culture that people want to work there. And ultimately, the best way I think for employers to do that is to be adaptable and figure out what jobs can be done at home. Let's provide partial work from home arrangements for the right people. And for others that maybe want to work in the office, then you have that opportunity as well. And I think that's where the perfect marriage comes into this. To me, then over time, I think more and more companies are going to go to remote because they don't have the cost of, as you know, in your business, right? You have, big infrastructure costs. You've got, office settings, furniture, cleaning services. I mean, the list goes on to just have an office setting, and you can minimize a lot of that. And now the technology's there that with Zoom that we're using now, with Teams, with Skype, with everything else, with all the Slack, the chat features that are available. It's amazing the way that you can still connect with people. And for us, what I'll say, and I know I mentioned this earlier, the absence makes the heart grow fonder fungus line from Bare Naked Ladies, is the fact that when we're together, the synergy, it's almost like we're at a high school reunion. Everybody's like, I got to get them in control. Like, okay, guys, we got to have a meeting now. We got to be productive. And to me, it just creates more of that camaraderie because you're not with them as often. Yeah. And so it's like seeing a long lost friend that you just have synergy with. It's like that time you have is special and you don't take it for granted.
Yeah, you try to make it much more productive. So I want to switch gears to close this conversation. Part of my objective of doing these video calls or podcasts is, there's a lot of people right out there that are unemployed, what I call the unemployed, underemployed, or are just looking to make a career change. And certainly in this environment, it's tough. I participated in a presentation that you did around hiring and onboarding through video. And while it was geared more towards their employer, I would like to focus a little bit more on the candidate, because I think the whole idea of video interviewing is probably going to grow more and more. So what insights or tips would you have, or recommendations would you give people that are now preparing to interview out there? If they're going to do a video interviewing like this, what should they consider? What should they know? What should they not do?
Sure. Yeah, well, I can speak from firsthand experience as a part of putting on an event earlier this week. I got suit and tied up, dressed up, and I took a selfie of myself, and I didn't realize some of the things that were in the background that was going to cause a ton of controversy. There was a beer there because it was a happy hour event, and drinking a beer was okay.
Yep.
And there was, I propped up my computer to have it eye level, and it was a board game, and it just kind of stood out in the picture. And so first and foremost, my suggestion to people is when they do a video interview, or even when they do a phone interview, right? You want to prepare for it the same way that you would when you're going on site. So to me, take a shower, clean yourself up, put your best interview suit on, even if it is not necessarily on the phone, but if you are going to be in video, look the part. Number one is my primary recommendation. Then in addition to that, find a quiet place that you can go, that you won't be disrupted. Even if you have spouse and kids that are there, that they need to know this is a time where the door's locked and mom or dad or whoever needs to have full concentration on being able to do their best in the interview. So that's second. Third, I would suggest that they be even more prepared with questions and background on the people that they're interviewing with. Because as soon as you get on there, I can see in your background, you had a license plate in Virginia, you've got baseballs there. Like all of a sudden there might be something on your LinkedIn profile, Gustavo, that you and I could very quickly, get in common and have some synergy around our communication. And those first few minutes, that's paramount. So just being prepared with questions and knowing who you're speaking with. And then there's a couple other points. Like I've been trained by an improv coach to make sure I'm looking at the camera, not looking down here, not looking over here, not making appropriate eye contact. And then last but not least, make sure that you're succinct with your responses, that you're not going on for 15 minutes while the other person's not talking, or that you're not giving 1 or 2 word answers to questions that should have sentences or paragraphs of answers. So those are my recommendations.
Yeah, certainly anything in the background all of a sudden becomes a potential topic of conversation, both ways, right? Both ways. That if you are a candidate, be careful, because you may not want what's in the background to be a topic of conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have to say, the very first time my brother and my daughter hung my Browns memorabilia behind me, if you can't tell, I'm a huge Browns fan. And the very first time I did a Zoom call, honest to God, it was an avid Steelers fan. And within like 2 minutes, we were having a little, it wasn't tension. It was just like friendly banter. And, she ragged on me for Bernie Kosar. I ragged on her for Ben Roethlisberger. We got through it, and then we got into our meeting, and it was kind of fun. But yeah, you gotta understand the background. People are paying attention. And I think that's also a pretty cool thing about working remotely, is people get to look inside your homes. I know my son said, "Oh my gosh, I never knew my one teacher was into this team. Like she's way into a certain baseball team, and because of her background, they created that connection."
Now, one more question. So finishing with the remote work from an employee perspective, and in line with what you just described in terms of tips for those interviewing, what are some recommendations or tips you can give people that are working remotely to ensure that they are being productive, that their managers know that they're working, that they're not slacking off or being distracted? Any tips or recommendations from that front?
Sure. Yeah. So one thing that I do, and I've trained my team to do, is I have a running to-do list of items that I have virtually as well as written down. And then every day I create a hit list of 3 to 5 things that have to get done today. So I minimize that larger to-do list into a shorter, compressed to-do list. So that's a number one recommendation I make to people. In addition to that, I encourage people to stop and start their day multiple times. So don't have run-on work, and in that, then you can batch things you need to do on your to-do list. And then as far as like managers and productivity, like we have 2 tools, Gustavo, within our business that aggregate data and create dashboards to tell me every second, every minute, every hour, every day, the type of productivity that we have completed. Maybe some companies weren't able to put those tools in place. So my encouragement to employees is to be proactive to your manager. Let them know what you got accomplished. I know I really appreciate as an owner when my employee says, "Hey, John, I just want to let you know what I did today. And here were one of the challenges that I faced." And sometimes when you don't say anything and you're kind of in this, like, well, I wonder what Gustavo's doing today. And if you were to preemptively send me an email or let me know what you're up to, then I, as a manager, have to say, "Oh, Gustavo seems to be focused on the right things or is reaching out to me." The ones that I feel suspicious about are the ones you never hear from.
Yeah. The mind wanders when you don't hear from someone. Sometimes it's good, bad. I have a saying that when there's lack of information, we tend to fill it up with whatever biases and what we're predisposed to thinking. So if you are an optimist, you're gonna say, oh, everything is good, everything is fine. If you are a pessimist, oh, what is this person doing? Why haven't they called me? Are they working? Something happens. So I do agree with that one in particular. Is there anything else that you want to share to the audience about any of the topics, about your company, or in general?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first and foremost, Gustavo, thank you for doing this. I've really appreciated watching your series and your passion for helping people out. It means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to others, and it speaks to your character. So I appreciate you taking time to do this and give that. From my perspective, because of what we do, we focus in HR and payroll. And so we are more than happy to help out any of the candidates that are out there that are watching this today, that are in HR, payroll, or know someone that is, or even if you're not, we're happy to provide, counsel and insight if you're looking for it and need that help. I know Gustavo is providing that resource as well. So to me, it's just our offer to help. And then lastly, I would say this, to me, I have never had to adapt more as a human being and as a leader and as a parent than in the last 2 months. I can't even tell you the number of things in my life that have changed. And I've had some, my father passed away. I had my favorite dog in my life. He unexpectedly passed away about a week after my dad. And it's just been a constant change. And I know, and I can hear it and feel it with everyone that I talk with, right? No one is okay right now. No one is yeah, I'm okay. Really, to me, the concern of the coronavirus and the economic challenges and everything else that's been impacted. So my last thing to people is, it's okay that you're not okay. And at the same time, I would recommend to just take it in small snippets and do the best you possibly can every single day. That best does not need to be an A. It can be a B or a C or a D, frankly, in some respects. And I just encourage everyone to just keep just getting up and doing the best they possibly can, because this will turn, we will return to something different than we had before, but not in the midst of the pandemic and the outbreak. So that's my last free advice or 2 cents, Gustavo. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share.
Well, listen, I appreciate you joining me. I'm glad that we connected. I like what you're doing also out there, not only in terms of the Disrupt HR, which you guys had to adapt, but obviously, being an HR person and focusing on that area, there's automatically a connection there. So I appreciate your participation, your insights, and we'll obviously remain in touch through LinkedIn and otherwise.
All right, Gustavo. Thank you very much. Take care.
Take care.
See you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.